The Moon Court had never been silent like this. Hundreds of wolves filled the ancient stone arena, their cloaks bearing the crests of every pack across the northern kingdoms. At the center of the court stood Lyra Hale, alone. The silver torches along the arena walls flickered as the full moon rose above the open ceiling where generations of alphas had judged their kind. Tonight they watched a different judgment. Lyra could feel every eye on her, every whisper, every doubt. Her wolf shifted uneasily beneath her skin, small and restless, as if it already sensed what the court was about to hear. Across the arena stood the man who held her fate, Rowan Valerius, Alpha King of the Northern Kingdoms, the most feared wolf on the continent. His presence filled the court like a gathering storm, broad shoulders wrapped in dark armor, golden eyes sharp beneath the torchlight. Rowan looked exactly as the stories described him, unyielding, powerful, impossible to challenge. And he was her mate. The truth pulsed through Lyra's chest like a second heartbeat. The mate bond had awakened the moment she stepped into the court. She could feel it now, burning between them like an invisible thread pulling tighter with every breath. Her wolf stirred again, hopeful. Mate. But Rowan didn't step closer. Instead, the Alpha King stood perfectly still, watching her, measuring her, waiting. The elders of the Moon Court shifted uneasily along the stone seats above. Everyone in the arena could smell it. The bond. Mate bonds between wolves were rare enough to stir entire packs. When an Alpha King discovered his mate, it was supposed to be a moment of celebration. A moment when kingdoms changed. Lyra swallowed, forcing courage into her voice. "My king." The words echoed softly through the court. Her heart pounded as she stepped forward, the mate bond tightening instantly in response. "You called this gathering to confirm the bond." Rowan's gaze darkened slightly. The silence that followed felt heavier than the mountain forest surrounding the court. Lyra felt the shift before anyone spoke. Her wolf whined quietly inside her chest. Something was wrong. Rowan's jaw tightened. For a brief moment his gaze moved over her face, as if searching for something he had hoped to find and failed. The mate bond pulsed again. Then the Alpha King spoke. "Yes." One word. Cold. The wolves watching leaned forward, because the entire court understood what came next. When an Alpha confirmed a mate bond, the ritual was simple. Claim, mark, unite the packs. Lyra waited. Her breath caught as Rowan stepped forward. The bond surged violently the closer he came, heat rushing through her veins as instinct screamed for him. "Mate, claim him!" But Rowan stopped several feet away. Too far to touch, too far to claim. Lyra's stomach tightened. "Rowan," she whispered. The Alpha King's golden eyes hardened. Then he spoke the words that shattered the court. "I reject this bond." The silence that followed was absolute. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one breathed. Lyra felt the words strike her chest like a blade. Her wolf recoiled instantly, the bond snapping tight with pain as disbelief flooded her mind. Reject. That word did not belong in mate rituals. Not here. Not before the entire Moon Court. A murmur rippled through the wolves watching. Shock. Confusion. Lyra stared at Rowan, her voice barely steady. "You reject me?" The Alpha King's expression remained carved from stone. His wolf pressed violently beneath his skin. She could smell the conflict, but his voice never wavered. "You are not fit to stand beside a king." The humiliation struck harder than the rejection itself. Lyra felt every pair of eyes in the arena turn toward her. An omega, small, unremarkable, unworthy of an Alpha King. Her wolf curled inward under the weight of it. The bond still burned between them, refusing to disappear, and that pain made the rejection worse. Rowan turned slightly toward the gathered packs. "My kingdom requires strength." His voice carried easily across the court. Not sentiment. The elders said nothing. None of the wolves challenged him. Because no one in the north challenged Rowan Valerius, Lyra's hands trembled at her sides. For a moment she couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The mate bond pulsed again, desperate and wounded, but Rowan had already turned away, dismissed, as if the bond between them meant nothing. The court doors creaked open behind her. An exit, a quiet invitation to leave with what dignity she had left. Lyra forced herself to stand straighter. The humiliation burned through her chest, hot and sharp, but something colder settled beneath it. Resolve. She turned toward Rowan one last time. "You may be the Alpha King." Her voice carried farther than she expected. But rejecting a bond does not erase it. Rowan did not turn around. The silence stretched between them. Then Lyra walked toward the court doors. Every step felt heavier than the last. The whispers followed her. Rejected, unworthy, Omega. Her hand reached the iron handle. The cold metal bit into her palm. Behind her, Rowan's voice finally broke the silence again. Quiet, uncertain. "Lyra." For a heartbeat, hope surged painfully through the bond. She paused, but she did not turn around, because the mate bond between them had just done something neither of them expected. Instead of fading, it burned hotter, stronger. Ancient power stirred beneath Lyra's skin, something deep in her blood responding to the rejection like a challenge. The moonlight pouring into the court flickered silver. The elders shifted uneasily, because the scent in the arena had just changed. Not Omega, something older, something royal. Lyra opened the court doors and stepped into the night, and far beneath the mountains of the northern kingdoms, an ancient throne of stone and silver began to glow. Chapter 1. The Offer That Started a War. 3 nights after the rejection, the northern forest smelled like rain and wounded pride. Mist drifted between the ancient pines as Lyra Hale walked alone along the narrow hunting path that led away from the moon court. The humiliation of that night still lingered in the air like a bruise that refused to fade. The wolves had not stopped whispering. Rejected. Unworthy. Omega. Each word followed her through the forest like a shadow she could not outrun. A wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin. The bond with Rowan Valerius still burned inside her chest, stubborn and alive despite his rejection. Every step she took felt like dragging a chain that refused to break. Lyra stopped beside a quiet clearing. Moonlight filtered through the branches above, pale silver spilling across the grass. The calm should have soothed her, but the bond pulsed again, sharp and relentless. Somewhere far away, the Alpha King was awake. She could feel him. The sensation made her jaw tighten. "Still haunting you?" The deep voice came from the edge of the clearing. Lyra turned slowly. Cassian Thorn stepped from the shadows. Rowan's best friend, Rowan's war commander, the wolf who had stood at the Alpha King's side through every battle that built the Northern Kingdom. Cassian's dark cloak moved softly with the night wind, his amber eyes steady as they settled on Lyra. Unlike the other wolves, there was no pity in his gaze, only quiet understanding. Lyra exhaled slowly. "You followed me." Cassian's mouth curved slightly. "You walked into the forest alone 3 nights after the Alpha King rejected you before the entire court." He folded his arms. "Following you seemed wise." A flicker of bitter amusement crossed Lyra's face. "Concern from the King's war commander?" Cassian stepped closer. The moonlight revealed the faint scars across his knuckles, marks earned from years of defending Rowan's throne. Concern from someone who watched a king make the worst mistake of his life. The words hung quietly between them. Lyra's wolf stirred again. Cassian smelled the bond immediately. His gaze sharpened slightly. "It still hurts." Not a question. Lyra looked away. The bond doesn't vanish just because pride gets in the way. The memory of the moon court flashed through her mind again. Rowan's voice, cold and final as he rejected her. Her chest tightened. Cassian watched her carefully. For a moment he said nothing. Then his voice lowered. You could leave the northern territories. Lyra blinked. What? The southern packs don't answer to Rowan. Cassian's tone remained calm. They wouldn't care about the Moon Court scandal. Lyra shook her head slowly. And run from the story everyone already believes? The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. No, she looked up at the moon. I won't spend my life hiding from a rejection. Cassian studied her expression. Something changed in his eyes. Interest. Respect. Then Lyra said something that made the night suddenly heavier. I have a better idea. Cassian's brow lifted slightly. Oh? Lyra turned toward him fully now. The moonlight caught the edge of the mate mark that did not exist, the place Rowan had refused to claim. Her voice softened. Rowan rejected me because he believed I was weak. Cassian said nothing. Lyra stepped closer. The scent of the mate bond flared again between them. If strength is what the Alpha King respects. Her eyes met Cassian's. Then perhaps I should stand beside someone stronger. The implication settled slowly into the clearing. Cassian went very still. The forest itself seemed to pause. You're suggesting something dangerous, he said quietly. Lyra held his gaze. Am I? Cassian studied her face carefully. The determination there was unmistakable, but beneath it he also saw the wound Rowan had left behind. You want revenge? Lyra's wolf stirred again. Not revenge, her voice lowered. Perspective. Cassian's jaw tightened slightly. You're talking about challenging the Alpha King. Not directly. Lyra took another step closer. Now only a few feet separated them. But if the woman he rejected suddenly stands beside the one wolf he trusts most? She let the thought finish itself. Cassian's expression darkened. Rowan would see it as betrayal. Lyra met his gaze without hesitation. He already betrayed the bond. The blunt truth hung in the air between them. For several long seconds neither wolf moved. Cassian's wolf stirred beneath his skin. Because what Lyra was proposing was more than scandal. It was a challenge, one that could fracture the entire northern kingdom. Cassian exhaled slowly. You're asking me to help you start a war. Lyra's eyes glinted faintly in the moonlight. I'm offering you something far more interesting. Cassian raised an eyebrow. And that is? Lyra's voice dropped to a quiet whisper. The Alpha King's rejected mate. The clearing fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hesitate between the trees. Cassian stared at her. Then, something unexpected happened. He laughed. Low, soft, dangerous. Lyra Hale. He stepped forward until the distance between them disappeared completely. You realize if Rowan hears this conversation, his amber eyes darkened. He'll tear this forest apart looking for us. Lyra held his gaze. Then maybe he'll finally understand what he threw away. Cassian studied her for a long moment. Then his wolf stirred again, curious, intrigued by the boldness standing in front of him. Finally, he spoke. If we do this, his voice dropped slightly, there is no turning back. Lyra didn't hesitate. I know. Cassian's gaze searched her face one last time. Then he nodded once. Very well. The agreement settled between them like a spark touching dry leaves. Neither wolf noticed the subtle shift in the air, the faint pulse of the mate bond that had suddenly surged stronger. Because miles away in the northern capital, Rowan Valerius had just stopped mid-step. The scent of Lyra's bond had changed. His wolf rose violently inside his chest. Not pain, jealousy. Rowan's golden eyes darkened as realization struck. His rejected mate was no longer alone, and the wolf standing beside her was the one man he trusted more than anyone. The Alpha King turned slowly toward the northern forest, a storm gathering in his chest, because suddenly he understood something terrifying. If Lyra Hale chose Cassian Thorne, the northern kingdoms would burn. Chapter 2. The Alpha's best friend who stole his mate. The northern capital woke before dawn. Torches still burned along the stone walls of the Alpha King's fortress when Rowan Valerius stepped onto the balcony overlooking the valley. The cold mountain wind carried the scent of pine, steel, and something far more unsettling. His mate, the bond, pulsed in his chest again, sharp, alive. Rowan's jaw tightened. 3 nights had passed since the Mooncourt rejection, yet the bond had refused to fade. Instead, it lingered like a wound that refused to close, tugging at his instincts every time Lyra moved somewhere beyond the reach of his sight. His wolf paced restlessly beneath his skin. Something had changed. Rowan could feel it. The bond no longer felt wounded. It felt challenged. His fingers tightened against the stone railing. "Report!" The command came low. Behind him, a guard shifted uneasily. "My king," the scouts returned from the western forest. Rowan didn't turn. "And?" The guard hesitated. They tracked Lyra Hale. The name struck the bond again. Rowan forced his voice to remain calm. "Where is she?" The guard swallowed. She wasn't alone. The air on the balcony seemed to freeze. Rowan slowly turned, golden eyes sharp as blades. "Say that again." The guard lowered his gaze. "Our scouts confirmed another wolf with her." Rowan's wolf surged violently. "Who?" The word cracked like thunder. The guard took a slow breath. "Cassian Thorn." Silence swallowed the balcony. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the stone railing beneath Rowan's hand cracked. His wolf exploded against the restraints of his control, rage tearing through him with sudden clarity. Cassian. Of all wolves, the one man who knew exactly what Lyra meant to him. Rowan stepped away from the railing. The bond flared again. Now the scent carried something unmistakable. Cassian's presence, too close, too familiar. Rowan's voice dropped dangerously. "Where?" "The western border forest." The guard forced the words out quickly. They were seen leaving the clearing together. Rowan's wolf snarled inside his chest. Leaving together. The image flashed instantly through his mind. Lyra standing beside Cassian beneath the moonlight. The bond between them shifting into something Rowan had never imagined. Jealousy struck like a blade. The guard shifted nervously. "My king..." The scouts believed it might simply be conversation. Rowan laughed. The sound carried no humor. "Cassian does not wander forests with rejected mates for conversation." The guard said nothing, because everyone in the Northern Kingdom understood the truth. If Lyra chose Cassian, it would not simply be scandal, it would be war. Rowan turned toward the fortress doors. "Summon the council." The guard blinked. "My king?" Rowan's gaze sharpened. Now, the war council chamber filled quickly. Stone walls lined with ancient weapons surrounded the long oak table where the northern alphas gathered whenever the kingdom faced threat. Tonight, the threat had a name. Lyra Hale. The murmurs faded as Rowan entered. Every wolf in the room felt the shift in the air instantly. The Alpha King was furious, the quiet kind that made warriors uneasy. Rowan stopped at the head of the table. Cassian Thorn left the capital 3 nights ago. The Alphas exchanged glances. Rowan continued. He found Lyra Hale in the western forest. A ripple moved through the room. One of the elder Alphas leaned forward. "My king..." Perhaps he intended to return her to the court. Rowan's wolf growled softly. "Cassian knows exactly what the court believes about her now." The implication landed heavily. Another Alpha spoke carefully. "If the war commander stands beside the rejected mate..." He did not finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Rowan finished it for "The kingdom fractures." The silence that followed stretched across the chamber, because every wolf present understood the danger. Cassian Thorn commanded loyalty among the northern warriors equal to Rowan's own authority. If he stood beside Lyra publicly, packs would choose sides. Rowan's voice lowered. "Send riders to the western forest." One of the younger Alphas frowned. "To retrieve them?" Rowan's gaze hardened. No. The words settled across the table like falling steel. To observe. Several wolves looked confused. Rowan continued, "If Cassian intends betrayal, I want proof before I tear this kingdom apart." The door to the chamber opened suddenly. A messenger rushed inside, breath uneven from running. "My king." Rowan turned slowly. "What?" The messenger bowed quickly. "A report from the western border." The room went still. Rowan's voice dropped. "Speak." The messenger hesitated, then forced the words out. Cassian Thorne was seen entering the moonlit tavern in Blackridge Village. Rowan's jaw tightened. "And Lyra?" The messenger swallowed. "She entered with him." The council erupted in low voices. The moonlit tavern was no simple inn. It was neutral territory, a gathering place where wolves from different packs met beyond the eyes of their alphas. If Lyra appeared there beside Cassian, the entire northern territory would hear about it before sunset. Rowan's wolf surged again. Possession, jealousy, regret. All of it collided violently in his chest. The elder alpha leaned forward. "My king! If the packs believe Cassian has taken the rejected mate..." Rowan's hand slammed against the table. The crack of wood silenced the room instantly. "Cassian has taken nothing." His voice dropped into a dangerous calm. "Lyra Hale is still bound to me." The bond pulsed sharply in his chest, as if answering the claim, but the elder alpha spoke carefully. "The court believes you rejected that bond." Rowan's golden eyes darkened. "I rejected the ritual." A pause. "I did not release the connection." The council exchanged uneasy glances, because every wolf in the room knew what that meant. The mate bond still existed. Rowan straightened slowly. "Prepare the horses." The elder alpha blinked. "You're leaving the capital?" Rowan's wolf stirred again. Lyra's scent tugged through the bond like an invisible thread pulling him west. "Yes." His voice lowered. "If Cassian intends to parade my mate through neutral territory..." The room grew very quiet. Rowan's gaze hardened toward the mountains beyond the fortress. "Then I will remind him who she belongs to." The moonlit tavern roared with noise. Traveling wolves crowded the wooden tables, their voices rising above the crackle of the fire burning in the center of the room. No one noticed the shift in the air when Lyra Hale stepped inside. At least, not immediately. She paused near the doorway. The scent of dozens of unfamiliar packs filled the room, thick and overwhelming compared to the quiet forests she had left behind. Beside her, Cassian Thorne moved easily through the crowd. His reputation preceded him. Several wolves recognized the Northern War Commander immediately and lowered their voices as he passed. Lyra leaned slightly closer. "You're attracting attention." Cassian's mouth curved faintly. "That tends to happen." He guided her toward a corner table. The tavern owner hurried forward instantly. "Commander Thorne." Cassian nodded once. "Food. 2 rooms." The man bowed slightly. "Of course." Lyra watched the exchange carefully. 2 rooms? Cassian lifted an eyebrow. "You expected something else?" Lyra felt heat rise to her face despite herself. "No." Cassian leaned back in his chair. "Relax, Lyra Hale." His amber eyes studied her calmly. "We're starting a political storm." A pause. "Not a scandal." Lyra looked away. The mate bond flared suddenly, strong, painfully alive. Her wolf stirred anxiously. Cassian noticed the shift instantly. Rowan felt that. Lyra exhaled slowly. "I know." Outside the tavern, thunder rolled faintly across the mountains. Cassian's gaze flicked toward the window, then back to Lyra. "You also realize something else." She frowned slightly. "What?" Cassian's voice lowered. "The moment Rowan hears where we are..." His wolf stirred with quiet anticipation. "He'll come himself." Lyra's heart tightened. Cassian leaned forward slightly. And when the Alpha King walks through that door, the tavern suddenly felt much smaller. Every wolf in this room will witness the beginning of a war. At that exact moment, the wind outside shifted. A new scent reached the tavern entrance. Cold, dominant, unmistakable. Cassian went still. Lyra's wolf surged violently, because only one wolf in the northern kingdoms carried that scent. The tavern door creaked open, and Rowan Valerius stepped inside. Chapter 3. The night the Alpha King started a kingdom hunt. The tavern fell silent. The moment Rowan Valerius stepped through the door, the noise of the room died as if someone had cut the air itself. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Tankards froze halfway to lips. Every wolf in the moonlit tavern recognized the scent that entered with him. Alpha King. Dominance rolled across the room like a storm front. Rowan closed the door behind him slowly, his golden eyes sweeping the crowded hall until they found the one face that had haunted him for 3 nights. Lyra Hale. The mate bond surged instantly, raw, violent, impossible to ignore. For a brief second, Rowan forgot the tavern, the watching wolves, the council politics waiting for him back in the capital. All he saw was her, standing beside Cassian Thorne. The sight struck harder than he expected. Jealousy surged through his chest like wildfire. Cassian felt the shift immediately. His chair scraped softly across the floor as he stood. The tavern watched carefully now. 2 of the most powerful wolves in the northern kingdom stood facing each other across the room, and between them, the rejected mate of the Alpha King. Rowan took a slow step forward. The crowd instinctively parted. His gaze never left Lyra. "You left the capital." Lyra held his stare. "You told me to." A few wolves exchanged uneasy glances. Rowan's jaw tightened slightly. The memory of the Moon Court rejection lingered between them like a wound that refused to close. His wolf stirred restlessly beneath his skin. Lyra smelled it immediately. Conflict, regret, possession. Cassian folded his arms loosely. "You tracked her fast?" Rowan's gaze finally shifted. The 2 men locked eyes. "You took her." The accusation landed heavy. Cassian's voice remained calm. "She walked with me." The tension in the room tightened another degree. Rowan stepped closer. Now only a few feet separated the 3 of them. The mate bond burned brighter the closer he came. Lyra felt it pull through her chest, sharp and relentless. Rowan noticed her reaction instantly. His voice dropped. "You still feel it?" Lyra's chin lifted. "You said it didn't matter." Rowan's wolf snarled quietly beneath his control. "I said the ritual didn't matter." Lyra's eyes flashed. "That's not what the Moon Court heard." Several wolves near the bar lowered their voices, realizing they were witnessing something far more dangerous than a simple argument. Cassian stepped slightly closer to Lyra. The motion was subtle, protective. Rowan saw it, and something dark flickered in his gaze. "You're standing very close to my mate." Cassian didn't move. "You rejected her." The word struck like a thrown blade. A ripple moved through the tavern. Because challenging the Alpha King in public territory required enormous confidence. Rowan's wolf surged again. "She is still bound to me." Lyra spoke before Cassian could respond. "You made your choice." Her voice was calm, but the pain beneath it carried clearly through the room. Rowan's chest tightened. For a brief moment he said nothing. Then he looked directly at Cassian. "Leave us." Cassian raised an eyebrow. "No." The refusal was simple, direct. Several wolves shifted uneasily. Rowan's dominance pressed harder against the room. "I wasn't asking." Cassian's wolf stirred beneath his skin. "You may command the northern armies." He held Rowan's gaze evenly. "But you don't command me in neutral territory." The tavern air thickened with tension. Lyra's wolf stirred anxiously between them. Rowan stepped closer again. Now his scent surrounded her completely. The mate bond pulsed so strongly it made her breath catch. His voice lowered. "Lyra, Just her name, nothing else. The sound of it pulled painfully at something in her chest. She hated that it still did. Rowan's gaze softened for the briefest second. "Come back to the capital." The request surprised the entire room. Lyra blinked. "You rejected me in front of the entire Moon Court." Rowan's jaw tightened. "And I will address that." Her voice sharpened. "Now?" The challenge hung between them. Rowan hesitated. The pause said more than any answer. Lyra stepped back. The movement broke the tension between them. "No." The word settled firmly. Cassian watched Rowan carefully now, because something had shifted in the Alpha King's expression. Rowan looked around the tavern slowly. Every wolf watching lowered their gaze. Then he spoke quietly. "So, this is how it begins." Lyra frowned slightly. "What does—" Rowan's eyes returned to Cassian. "Betrayal." Cassian didn't flinch. "You're the one who broke the bond first." The Alpha King exhaled slowly. His wolf settled into something dangerous and controlled. Then Rowan did something unexpected. He turned away. The motion stunned the room. Lyra stared at his back. "You're leaving?" Rowan paused near the tavern door. For a moment he said nothing. Then his voice carried across the silent room. "No." His hand rested on the door handle. "I'm declaring a hunt." The words sent a ripple through every wolf present. Lyra's breath caught. Cassian's expression sharpened instantly. Rowan opened the door. Cold night air rushed into the tavern. "The northern kingdoms will search every forest, every border, every territory, until Lyra Hale returns to me." He glanced over his shoulder, golden eyes burning with quiet fury. "You wanted perspective." His voice lowered. "Now you'll see how far a king will go for what belongs to him." Lyra felt the bond surge again. Wild, unpredictable. Rowan stepped outside, but before the door closed he added one final sentence. "If any wolf stands between me and my mate." The warning lingered in the doorway like thunder waiting to strike. "They will answer to the Alpha King." The door shut. The tavern remained silent long after Rowan Valerius disappeared into the storm-dark forest. Lyra stood very still. Cassian exhaled slowly beside her. "Well?" He glanced toward the door. That escalated quickly. Lyra's wolf stirred uneasily. "Cassian!" He looked at her. "Yes?" Lyra's voice dropped. "You said this might start a war." Cassian's gaze moved toward the forest where Rowan had vanished. "Yes," Lyra swallowed. "Did we just start it?" Cassian's wolf stirred thoughtfully. He gave a slow nod. "Lyra Hale." A faint smile touched his mouth. "I believe the Alpha King just declared one." Chapter 4. The Kingdom That Chose Sides. Dawn broke slowly over the northern mountains. Cold light spilled across the forests as riders thundered down every road leaving the capital. The command had spread through the kingdom before sunrise, carried by messengers and the howl of pack wolves racing through the valleys. The Alpha King had declared a hunt. Every pack heard the same words before the sun touched the peaks. "Find Lyra Hale. Return her to Rowan Valerius." No wolf questioned the order. The moonlit tavern felt smaller in the morning light. Travelers moved carefully now, their conversations quiet as rumors spread from table to table. Every wolf present knew they had witnessed something dangerous the night before. Lyra sat near the window, watching mist drift over the forest road. The mate bond pulsed again, still strong, still impossible to ignore. Her fingers tightened slightly around the wooden table. "He's moving the kingdom." Cassian didn't look surprised. He sat across from her, calm as ever, though the tavern door had not left his sight since sunrise. "Of course he is." Lyra frowned slightly. "You expected this?" Cassian leaned back in his chair. "Rowan Valerius does not lose what he considers his—" The blunt truth hung quietly between them. Lyra looked away. The memory of Rowan standing in the tavern doorway flashed through her mind again. His voice calm, his eyes burning with something far more dangerous than anger. Possession. You knew this wouldn't stay quiet. Lyra nodded slowly. I didn't expect him to hunt me across the entire kingdom. Cassian's wolf stirred beneath his skin. That's the problem. Lyra looked back at him. What problem? Cassian's gaze sharpened. Rowan didn't declare a hunt for revenge. A pause. He declared it for territory. Lyra's brow furrowed. I'm not territory. Cassian's voice lowered. Not intentionally. The tavern door opened suddenly. Cold wind swept through the room along with 3 wolves wearing the crest of the eastern mountains. Cassian went still. Lyra noticed immediately. What is it? Cassian's eyes followed the newcomers carefully. Those wolves don't belong to Rowan's kingdom. Lyra studied them. Their cloaks carried a dark crest she didn't recognize. Then whose pack are they? Cassian's voice remained calm. The Eastern Territories. Recognition flickered across his face, which means the tallest of the 3 wolves turned toward their table. Amber eyes sharp. Lyra felt the weight of his gaze immediately. Cassian exhaled softly. That is Alpha Darius Volkov. The name carried weight. Even Lyra had heard it before. Ruler of the Eastern Mountains. One of the few alphas powerful enough to stand against Rowan Valerius without fear. Darius Volkov approached their table slowly. The tavern quieted again as wolves recognized the growing tension. One Alpha King's commander, another Alpha's rival. And between them, the rejected mate who had suddenly become the center of both kingdoms. Darius stopped beside their table. His gaze moved calmly between Cassian and Lyra. Then he smiled slightly. Well, his voice was deep and amused. I travel 3 days through mountain snow and walk into a tavern only to find the Northern Kingdom's most famous scandal sitting at breakfast. Cassian didn't rise. What do you want, Darius? Darius shrugged lightly. Curiosity. His eyes settled on Lyra. You must be Lyra Hale. Lyra held his gaze. I must be. Darius chuckled quietly. You've caused quite the storm. He leaned one hand against the table. Rowan Valerius has half his kingdom searching the forests for you. Lyra didn't react. I heard. Darius studied her carefully. Something thoughtful flickered behind his eyes. Then he spoke again. You know what happens when an Alpha King hunts someone across his borders? Cassian answered before Lyra could. Other kingdoms notice. Darius nodded approvingly. Exactly. His gaze sharpened. And some of us begin asking very interesting questions. Lyra folded her arms. Such as, Darius's smile returned. Why the most powerful Alpha in the north would risk war over one rejected mate. The words landed softly, but the meaning behind them was sharp. Cassian watched Darius carefully. You didn't ride here just to ask questions. Darius shrugged. Perhaps not. His gaze lingered on Lyra again. There are older rumors as well. Lyra felt a strange chill run through her chest. What rumors? Darius tapped the table lightly with one finger. Stories about a bloodline that vanished centuries ago. Cassian's expression changed instantly. Subtle, but unmistakable. Darius noticed. So you've heard them too? Cassian's voice lowered. This isn't the place. Darius straightened slowly. No. He glanced toward the tavern windows. Probably not. Lyra's wolf stirred uneasily. Someone mind telling me what you're talking about? Cassian hesitated. Darius answered instead. The Lunar Throne. The name hung in the air like a whisper from the past. Lyra frowned. I've never heard of it. Darius studied her carefully. That's interesting. Cassian stood slowly now. We're leaving. Darius stepped aside easily. No argument here. Lyra rose from the table. Confusion tugged at her thoughts. What is the Lunar Throne? Cassian's voice remained calm. A legend. Darius chuckled behind them. Some legends are more dangerous than wars. Lyra stopped near the tavern door. Then maybe someone should explain why my name suddenly belongs in one. Cassian met her gaze. Before he could answer, a distant howl cut through the morning air, long, commanding pack wolves. Cassian's eyes narrowed. That didn't take long. Lyra's heart sank slightly. Rowan's hunt had arrived. Outside the tavern, riders were already appearing along the forest road. Northern wolves, dozens of them. Darius folded his arms as he watched through the window. Well? His voice carried faint amusement. The Alpha King's soldiers have found you. Lyra looked toward Cassian. What now? Cassian's wolf stirred. His answer was simple. Now the kingdom chooses sides. Outside, the first rider dismounted. The wolf removed his hood. Lyra recognized him immediately. One of Rowan Valerius's personal guards. The man stepped forward and raised his voice so the entire tavern could hear. By order of Alpha King Rowan Valerius. Every wolf in the room froze. Lyra Hale is to return to the capital immediately. Silence followed. Cassian didn't move. Darius didn't move. Lyra felt the mate bond pulse again, stronger, closer. Because somewhere beyond the forest, the Alpha King himself was coming. Chapter 5. The War Council that defied the Alpha King. The road outside the moonlit tavern filled with wolves before the sun climbed fully over the mountains. Armor glinted between the trees as riders formed a silent ring around the village. Northern soldiers dismounted in disciplined lines, their cloaks marked with the crest of the Alpha King Rowan Valerius. Inside the tavern no one spoke. The command delivered moments earlier still echoed through the room. Return Lyra Hale to the capital. Immediately. Lyra stood near the doorway, feeling the mate bond pulse harder with every passing second. Somewhere beyond the forest, the presence of Rowan Valerius moved closer, his wolf a steady pressure against her instincts. Her chest tightened. He's coming himself. Cassian Thorne didn't deny it. He doesn't trust anyone else with this. Lyra exhaled slowly. That's comforting. Cassian's mouth curved faintly. I didn't say he was coming calm. Across the tavern, Alpha Darius Volkov leaned against a wooden pillar, watching the soldiers gather outside the windows. His amber eyes held quiet interest, as though the unfolding chaos amused him. Well, he said mildly, the Alpha King wastes no time. Cassian glanced at him. You're still here. Darius shrugged. I traveled 3 days through snow for answers. I'm not leaving before the interesting part. Lyra folded her arms. And what exactly counts as the interesting part? Darius's gaze shifted to the door. When the king arrives. The tavern floor vibrated faintly beneath approaching hooves. Cassian heard it first. Too late. The riders outside suddenly parted. Through the tavern windows, wolves watched a single black horse step into the center of the road. The animal stopped smoothly as its rider dismounted. Even from a distance, the presence was unmistakable. Rowan Valerius. The tavern grew deathly still. Lyra felt the bond strike her chest the moment he stepped onto the road. Raw, powerful, impossible to ignore. Her wolf surged forward instinctively. Mate. Cassian noticed her reaction instantly. He feels it too. Lyra didn't answer. The tavern door opened slowly. Cold air followed Rowan Valerius inside. The room seemed to shrink around him. Golden eyes swept the space once before locking onto the one person he had come for. Lyra Hale. The mate bond flared violently. For a moment, neither moved. Rowan's wolf pressed hard against his control, furious and possessive as the scent of another alpha lingered too close to her. Then he saw Cassian Thorne standing beside her. Something dark flickered in his expression. Commander. Cassian didn't bow. My king. The title carried respect, but not submission. The tavern wolves noticed. Darius Volkov noticed. Rowan noticed. You ignored my order. Cassian's tone remained even. I protected someone you rejected. A murmur rippled through the room. Rowan's jaw tightened. That rejection did not release the bond. Lyra stepped forward before Cassian could answer. You made sure the entire Moon Court believed it did. Rowan looked at her fully now. The anger in his expression softened slightly. You left before I finished speaking. Lyra's voice sharpened. You finished the important part. Silence stretched between them. Rowan's gaze lowered briefly to the space where a mate mark should have rested on her neck. Regret flickered there for a heartbeat. Then his attention shifted to Darius Volkov. You're far from the eastern mountains. Darius pushed away from the pillar. I heard an Alpha King declared a hunt across half the continent. He smiled faintly. I came to see if the rumors were true. Rowan's voice cooled. They are. Darius nodded slowly. That's ambitious. Rowan's gaze hardened. Leave. Darius laughed softly. You're standing in neutral territory. The reminder hung in the air. Rowan said nothing. Darius continued. Besides, I'm curious. His eyes moved briefly toward Lyra. Most kings start wars over land. A pause. You started one over a woman. The tension inside the tavern tightened. Rowan's wolf stirred. She is not just a woman. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Cassian noticed, so did Lyra. Darius tilted his head thoughtfully. Interesting. Rowan stepped forward slowly. The soldiers outside shifted in response. Every wolf in the tavern felt the dominance in the air thicken. Lyra Hale, his voice dropped lower. You will return to the capital. Lyra met his gaze. No. The refusal landed quietly, but it echoed through the room like thunder. Rowan's wolf surged. Cassian stepped slightly closer to her. Protective, the motion did not escape the Alpha King's attention. You're making this worse. Lyra held her ground. You made it worse the moment you rejected me. Rowan's control slipped for the briefest second. Because the court wasn't safe for you. The words stunned the room. Lyra blinked. What? Rowan's expression hardened again. But the damage was done. Cassian studied him carefully now. You rejected your mate to protect her? Rowan didn't answer. Darius Volkov smiled slowly. Well, he looked between them. That complicates things. Lyra's heart pounded. If that was true, her voice shook slightly. You should have said it. Rowan's gaze softened again. I tried. Cassian's voice cut in. Too late now. The two alphas locked eyes again. Rowan spoke carefully. You're standing between a king and his mate. Cassian didn't move. You're standing between a woman and the man who humiliated her. The tavern seemed to hold its breath. Darius watched both men with quiet fascination. Then he said something that changed everything. You're both arguing over the wrong thing. Rowan's gaze snapped toward him. Darius folded his arms. You think this hunt is about pride? His eyes shifted to Lyra. But the real question is something else entirely. Lyra frowned. What question? Darius's voice lowered. Why the Lunar Throne woke the night Rowan rejected you. The words struck the room like lightning. Cassian stiffened. Rowan's eyes darkened instantly. Lyra felt a sudden chill run down her spine. What did you just say? Darius smiled faintly. Oh, he glanced toward Rowan. So the Alpha King hasn't told you yet. Rowan's voice dropped dangerously low. Enough. Darius raised both hands calmly. Relax. But his eyes never left Lyra. Your bloodline just became the most valuable secret on the continent. Outside the tavern, another howl echoed through the forest. Not Rowan soldiers this time. Different packs, different territories. Darius chuckled softly. And it appears the rest of the world is starting to notice. Lyra turned toward the windows. More riders were arriving along the forest road. Dozens of them, crests from packs she didn't recognize. The hunt had just become something much bigger. Cassian exhaled slowly. Well, he glanced at Rowan. Looks like the War Council is about to get crowded. Rowan's wolf stirred again, because suddenly it wasn't just his kingdom searching for Lyra Hale. It was everyone. Chapter 6. The first alpha who came to claim the queen. The road outside the moonlit tavern filled with wolves. What had begun as a quiet village morning had turned into something far more dangerous. Riders gathered along the forest road in growing numbers, their cloaks marked with the crests of distant packs. Some belonged to Rowan Valerius. Others did not. Inside the tavern, the tension had thickened into something almost physical. Every wolf present had heard Alpha Darius Volkov's words, the Lunar Throne. Lyra Hale stood very still, trying to understand the sudden shift in the air. The mate bond in her chest pulsed harder now, reacting not only to Rowan's presence but to something deeper, something older stirring beneath her skin. "You're all staring at me like I just started a war," she said quietly. Darius Volkov chuckled. "You didn't start it," he nodded toward the road outside. "You simply gave it a reason." Rowan Valerius remained near the tavern entrance, his golden eyes fixed on Lyra, as though the rest of the world had faded around her. The mate bond burned between them. Still alive, still unbroken. Cassian noticed the way Rowan's gaze softened when it settled on her. "You should explain," Cassian said. Rowan didn't move. "Not here." Lyra's voice sharpened. "You rejected me in front of the Moon Court, but now you want privacy?" Rowan's jaw tightened slightly. Before he could respond, the tavern door swung open again. Cold wind swept through the room along with a new scent, stronger, dominant. Every wolf in the tavern turned toward the doorway. A massive man stepped inside, his cloak dusted with snow from the mountain road. His shoulders nearly filled the entrance, and the scar across his cheek gave his calm expression a dangerous edge. Darius Volkov sighed. "Well," he folded his arms. "That didn't take long." Cassian's voice lowered. "Who is it?" Darius answered quietly. "Alpha Victor Cade of the Iron Ridge Packs." The name rippled through the tavern. Lyra had heard it before. A war alpha. A wolf known for expanding his territory whenever weakness appeared among rival kingdoms. Victor Cade stepped forward slowly. His gaze moved across the room before settling on the center table, on Lyra. Recognition flickered instantly. "Well," his deep voice carried easily across the tavern, "I wondered if the rumors were exaggerated." He approached without hesitation. Rowan's wolf stirred immediately. Cassian noticed. Darius smiled faintly. This was becoming interesting. Victor stopped a few feet from Lyra. "You're smaller than I expected." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "And you're ruder than I hoped." Several wolves near the bar choked back nervous laughter. Victor's grin widened. "Good." He looked pleased. Then his attention shifted briefly to Rowan Valerius. The air tightened instantly. "Alpha King," Rowan's voice carried quiet authority. "Leave." Victor ignored the command. His attention returned to Lyra. "You're the wolf every pack in the north is suddenly hunting." Lyra folded her arms. "Apparently." Victor studied her carefully. "Interesting scent." Cassian stepped slightly forward. "Careful." Victor glanced at him. "War Commander Thorn." He chuckled. "You always did pick the complicated battles." Cassian didn't respond. Victor turned back to Lyra. "Tell me something, Lyra Hale." His voice lowered. "Did Rowan Valerius really reject you?" Lyra felt the mate bond pulse again as Rowan shifted behind her. "Yes." The answer was simple. Victor's eyes gleamed. "Then the rumors might be true." Rowan spoke sharply. "Enough!" Victor slowly turned. The two alphas faced each other fully now. Dominance thickened the air between them. You declared a hunt across half the continent, Victor said calmly. That tends to attract attention. Rowan's voice cooled. You've seen enough. Victor shook his head. Actually, his gaze drifted briefly back to Lyra. I came to make an offer. Cassian's wolf stirred. What offer? Victor smiled slightly. If the Alpha King rejected his mate, he looked directly at Rowan. Then the bond is open to challenge. The tavern exploded into murmurs. Lyra blinked in shock. That's not how bonds work. Victor shrugged. Usually, his gaze sharpened. But the Lunar Throne changes certain rules. Rowan's control snapped. A deep growl rolled through the tavern. No one challenges my bond. Victor's expression didn't change. You rejected it publicly. He spread his hands slightly. Which means the rest of us are free to compete. Lyra stared at him. Compete? Darius Volkov laughed quietly. Congratulations. Lyra frowned. For what? Darius nodded toward the gathering wolves outside. You've become the most valuable prize in the Northern Kingdoms. Rowan's voice dropped dangerously. She is not a prize. Victor Cade met his gaze calmly. Then mark her. The words landed like a thrown blade. Silence swallowed the tavern. Because everyone in the room knew the truth. Rowan had not marked her, and until he did, the bond remained vulnerable. Lyra felt her heart pounding now. Rowan looked at her. Something conflicted flashed in his eyes. Not here. Victor laughed. Then I accept the challenge. Cassian's head snapped toward him. You're insane. Victor shrugged. Perhaps. He stepped closer to Lyra. Rowan's wolf surged violently. Cassian moved instantly between them. Try it. The two war alphas stared at each other. Victor's smile sharpened. This just became entertaining. Outside the tavern, more wolves were arriving. More packs, more crests. The hunt was spreading. Darius Volkov looked around the room slowly. Then he spoke quietly. Well, Lyra glanced at him. What now? Darius smiled. Now the alphas of the continent start arriving. Lyra's stomach dropped slightly. Rowan's voice cut through the tension. No one touches her. Victor met his gaze evenly. Then you should have claimed her. The silence that followed carried the weight of a coming storm, because every wolf present could feel it now. The war wasn't about territory. It wasn't about pride. It was about Lyra Hale, and the throne her blood might awaken. Cassian exhaled slowly. Lyra. She looked at him. Yes? Cassian's voice dropped. This hunt just turned into a crown war. Outside, another pack howl echoed across the forest, and somewhere far beneath the mountains, the ancient Lunar Throne pulsed again. Chapter 7. The night Cassian Thorn proved why kings fear him. The moonlit tavern had never held so many predators in one room. The fire in the center hearth crackled softly, but no one paid attention to it. Every wolf present was focused on the circle forming near the middle of the floor. Alpha Victor Cade stood with relaxed confidence. Across from him stood Cassian Thorn. Between them, Lyra Hale, and near the doorway the storm itself. Rowan Valerius. No one spoke, because every wolf in the tavern understood what had just happened. Victor Cade had challenged the Alpha King's claim, and Cassian Thorn had stepped forward first. Lyra felt the mate bond pulse violently as Rowan's wolf surged against his control. The scent of dominance thickened the air until breathing itself felt heavier. Move, Victor said calmly to Cassian. Cassian didn't move. No. The answer was simple. Final. Victor tilted his head slightly. You're protecting the rejected mate of your own king. Cassian's amber eyes didn't waver. I'm protecting a woman you just tried to claim like territory. Victor chuckled. That's how the world works. Cassian's voice lowered. Not tonight. The tension snapped tighter. Rowan watched silently from the doorway. His wolf raged inside him. Furious at the sight of Cassian standing so close to Lyra, furious at Victor for daring to challenge him, furious at himself for creating the moment in the first place. Lyra felt it all through the bond, every violent pulse of emotion. She turned slightly toward Rowan. "Are you going to stop this?" Rowan didn't answer, because part of him needed to see how this ended. Victor rolled his shoulders slowly. "Well," his smile sharpened, "let's test that." The movement came without warning. Victor lunged forward, but Cassian was faster. His hand closed around Victor's collar before the larger alpha could reach Lyra, slamming him hard against the tavern pillar beside them. Wood cracked under the force. The entire room erupted with snarls. Victor recovered instantly, shoving Cassian back as his wolf surged to the surface. Muscles tightened, teeth flashing briefly as the alpha's instincts roared for dominance. Cassian didn't shift. He simply stepped forward again. Calm, controlled, terrifyingly precise. "Sit down," Cassian said quietly. The command rolled through the tavern like thunder. Victor laughed. "You think you can order me?" Cassian's eyes darkened. "You misunderstand." A pause. That wasn't a request. Victor attacked again. The two alphas collided in the center of the tavern, the impact sending chairs skidding across the floor as wolves scrambled back to clear space. Victor struck first. Cassian blocked it effortlessly. A second strike came faster, aimed for Cassian's throat. Cassian twisted sideways and caught Victor's arm, turning the momentum against him and slamming him into the floor hard enough to shake the room. The entire tavern froze. Victor Cade was known for breaking warriors twice Cassian's size. Yet Cassian stood over him now like a quiet executioner. Victor pushed up slowly, blood touched the corner of his lip, and he smiled. "Now I remember." He wiped the blood away. "Why kings keep you close?" Cassian didn't react. "Stay down." Victor lunged again. Cassian moved once, one clean motion, a strike to the ribs, a twist of the shoulder. Then Victor Cade crashed through a table and landed flat on his back. The tavern went silent. Not because the fight was violent, but because it ended so quickly. Cassian stood in the center of the room, breathing steady, his expression completely calm, the kind of calm that made warriors uneasy. Lyra stared at him. "You did that easily?" Cassian glanced at her briefly. He attacked twice. A pause. "I was being polite." Across the room, Victor pushed himself up slowly, shaking splinters of broken wood from his cloak. His smile had disappeared. "You've gotten better." Cassian's voice remained quiet. "I had good training." Both alphas glanced toward the tavern doorway, where Rowan Valerius still stood, watching everything. The room felt colder suddenly, because Rowan had not moved once during the fight, but his wolf had. The dominance radiating from him now filled the tavern like a gathering storm. Victor noticed. So, he brushed dust from his coat. "The Alpha King finally wakes up." Rowan stepped forward. Every wolf in the room lowered their gaze instinctively. Even Victor's confidence dimmed slightly. Rowan stopped beside Lyra. The mate bond surged the moment he stood close to her again. His voice came low. "Are you hurt?" Lyra blinked. "No." The question surprised her. Rowan turned slowly toward Victor. "You challenged my bond." Victor lifted his chin. "You rejected it." Rowan's gaze hardened. "I delayed it." The correction carried a dangerous edge. Victor shrugged. "Then mark her." The tavern fell silent again. Lyra's heart pounded. Rowan's eyes flickered briefly toward the place on her neck where his mark should have been. The hesitation lasted only a second, but everyone saw it. Darius Volkov spoke quietly from the corner. "That hesitation is the reason the rest of us are here." Rowan's wolf snarled beneath his skin. Lyra stepped forward suddenly. "Stop!" Every wolf turned toward her. Her voice steadied. "I'm not a throne." She looked at Victor. "I'm not a prize." Then she turned to Rowan. "And I'm not something you can claim only when someone else tries to take me." The words cut deeper than any blade. Rowan went very still. The mate bond pulsed again, stronger. Something new stirred beneath Lyra's skin at the same moment. A sudden warmth spread through her chest. Darius noticed immediately. So it begins. Cassian looked at him. What begins? Darius's gaze fixed on Lyra. The throne waking. The tavern lights flickered. A strange silver glow passed briefly across the floorboards. Several wolves stepped back instinctively. Lyra frowned. What was that? Cassian's voice lowered. Lyra. She looked at him. Yes? Cassian's gaze darkened slightly. You just made every alpha in this room want you even more. Outside the tavern, more howls echoed across the forest, more packs arriving, more alphas answering the hunt. Rowan stared at Lyra now as realization settled into his chest. This was no longer a simple mate dispute. The war had already begun. And the woman standing in front of him might be the crown that decided it. Chapter 8. The Alpha King who came to take his mate back. The tavern felt smaller with every passing minute. Outside, the forest road had turned into a gathering ground for wolves from across the northern territories. Riders continued to arrive beneath the grey sky, their pack crests flashing like distant banners of war. Inside the moonlit tavern, no one spoke. The silver flicker that had passed across the floor moments earlier had changed everything. Every wolf present had felt it, something ancient, something powerful, and it had come from Lyra Hale. She stood in the center of the room now, her heart racing as the strange warmth still lingered in her chest. I didn't do that, she said quietly. Across the room, Alpha Darius Volkov watched her with unmistakable fascination. You didn't mean to, he replied. That's usually how old power wakes. Lyra frowned. I don't even know what the Lunar Throne is. Cassian's voice lowered slightly. Most wolves think it's just a legend. A pause. But Rowan knows it's not. Every eye in the tavern turned toward Rowan Valerius. The Alpha King hadn't moved since the silver glow appeared. His golden eyes remained locked on Lyra, his expression unreadable as the mate bond pulsed steadily between them. Lyra felt the pressure of that gaze. Then explain it, Rowan exhaled slowly. This isn't the place. Lyra's patience snapped. You rejected me in the moon court. Her voice carried across the room. Now every alpha on the continent is hunting me. She took a step closer to him. I think it's exactly the place. The silence stretched. Rowan's wolf stirred uneasily. Then he spoke. The Lunar Throne is older than the northern kingdoms. His voice carried low authority, the tone of a ruler revealing a truth he had guarded for years. It belonged to the first wolf queen. Lyra blinked. Queen? Darius nodded. The one who united the original packs. Cassian's brow furrowed slightly. I thought that bloodline vanished centuries ago. Rowan's gaze softened slightly as it settled on Lyra. It didn't vanish. Lyra's chest tightened. You're saying it's me? Rowan didn't answer directly, but the look in his eyes was enough. A murmur rippled through the tavern. Victor Cade laughed quietly from near the broken table. Well, he folded his arms, that explains the sudden interest. Cassian's jaw tightened. You're not claiming anything, Victor shrugged. You already rejected her. The words hung in the air like a blade. Rowan's wolf surged. I rejected the ritual. His voice dropped dangerously low. Not the bond. Lyra's voice sharpened. You made sure the entire moon court believed otherwise. Rowan stepped closer. The mate bond flared instantly. The space between them felt charged, every instinct inside Lyra reacting to his presence. I did what I had to do. Lyra's heart pounded. You humiliated me. Rowan's voice softened. I protected you. The room fell silent again. Cassian stared at him. You expect her to believe that? Rowan's gaze shifted briefly toward his war commander. The court was already divided. He looked back at Lyra. If they knew you carried the Lunar Throne bloodline, his voice lowered, they would have torn the kingdom apart to control you. Lyra felt something twist painfully in her chest. You could have trusted me. Rowan's jaw tightened. I didn't trust them. Cassian stepped forward. You should have trusted her. The two men locked eyes. Years of loyalty stood between them. So did something new. Rowan spoke carefully. You're standing between me and my mate. Cassian didn't move. I'm standing beside someone you hurt. Rowan's control slipped slightly. The dominance in the room surged as his wolf pressed harder against the surface. She belongs with me. Lyra's voice cut through the tension. I belong to myself. The words stunned the tavern. Even Darius Volkov looked impressed. Victor Cade chuckled quietly. I like her. Rowan ignored him. His gaze remained fixed on Lyra. Come back to the capital. Lyra shook her head slowly. No. Rowan took another step closer. The mate bond burned hotter now, pulling at both of them with painful intensity. You're not safe out here. Lyra lifted her chin. I wasn't safe in your court either. The words landed hard. For the first time since entering the tavern, Rowan looked uncertain. Cassian noticed. So did Darius. Then Rowan did something no one expected. He turned toward the wolves gathered inside the tavern. His voice rose, carrying the authority of a king. Hear me. The room fell silent instantly. I rejected Lyra Hale in the moon court. A pause. But I did not release the mate bond. His gaze returned to Lyra. She is still mine. The declaration sent murmurs through the room. Victor Cade smiled sharply. That sounds like a claim. Cassian's expression darkened. Rowan continued. And any alpha who attempts to take her from me. The warning in his voice deepened. Declares war on the Northern Crown. The tavern exploded with whispers. Darius Volkov laughed softly. Well, he leaned against the wall again. Now it's official. Lyra stared at Rowan. You don't get to claim me after rejecting me. Rowan stepped closer still. Now only a breath separated them. The mate bond surged violently. His voice lowered enough that only she heard it. I never stopped wanting you. Lyra's heart stumbled. The confession came too late. Cassian stepped forward. That doesn't fix what you did. Rowan's gaze flicked toward him again. And you think standing beside her does? The tension between them tightened dangerously. Then something unexpected happened. Lyra moved. She stepped between the two alphas. Stop! Both men went still. Lyra looked at Rowan first. You rejected me. Then she turned to Cassian. And you protected me. Her voice steadied. But neither of you get to decide what happens next. The silence that followed felt heavier than the mountain sky outside, because every wolf in the room knew what she was about to do. Lyra took a slow breath. Then she said the one sentence that changed everything. If I choose anyone, her gaze moved between Rowan and Cassian, it will be my decision. The mate bond pulsed violently. Rowan's wolf surged. Cassian's expression tightened. Outside, the howls of arriving packs echoed through the forest, because the entire continent was now watching. And the Queen of the Lunar Throne had just declared her independence. Chapter 9. When the entire continent came hunting the Queen. The first horn sounded at sunset. A deep echo rolled across the forest valleys, vibrating through the wooden walls of the moonlit tavern like distant thunder. Every wolf in the room froze. Lyra felt the vibration through her bones. What was that? Cassian moved toward the window. His eyes darkened instantly. More alphas. Outside, the road had become a battlefield without weapons. Wolves filled the clearing in growing numbers, their scents mixing in the cold evening air. Dominance, challenge, curiosity, territory, power. Every pack crest visible beneath the rising moon meant the same thing. The hunt had spread beyond the northern kingdom. It had become continental. Darius Volkov whistled softly. Well, he folded his arms. That escalated faster than expected. Lyra joined Cassian near the window. The sight outside made her chest tighten. Dozens of riders now circled the village. Some wore mountain cloaks. Others carried the dark markings of southern packs. And more were arriving. "This is insane," Lyra whispered. Cassian nodded. "They're not here for Rowan." Lyra looked at him. "They're here for me." Across the tavern, Rowan Valerius stood near the entrance like a statue carved from stone. The Alpha King watched the growing army outside with quiet calculation. His wolf was restless. Every instinct inside him screamed to take Lyra away from this place, far from the eyes of rival kings. But the moment she had declared her independence, the balance had shifted. Now the entire world had heard it. Rowan stepped forward slowly. "They're testing me," Darius chuckled. "Of course they are." He gestured toward the road. "When a king rejects his mate publicly, the rest of the continent assumes weakness." Rowan's golden eyes hardened. "I am not weak." "No," Darius agreed, "but your decision created opportunity." The tavern door burst open again. Another alpha entered, this one taller than most wolves present, his silver hair catching the light of the hearth. The murmurs began instantly. Cassian recognized him first. "Alpha Marcus Rhine," Darius raised an eyebrow. "Southern Territories." Marcus Rhine walked calmly toward the center of the tavern, ignoring the tension surrounding the room. His gaze settled immediately on Lyra. "Interesting." Lyra crossed her arms. "I'm starting to hate that word." Marcus smiled faintly. "I imagine so." His attention shifted briefly toward Rowan. "You've caused quite the gathering, Alpha King." Rowan's voice remained cold. "You're trespassing." Marcus shrugged. "You declared a hunt across multiple territories." His gaze returned to Lyra. "That makes this everyone's problem." Victor Cade laughed from the corner. "And everyone's opportunity." Cassian stepped slightly closer to Lyra. "You're not taking her." Marcus studied him. "War Commander Thorn." A faint smile touched his mouth. "You're loyal." Cassian's answer came instantly. "Yes." Marcus's eyes moved back to Lyra. "Pity." The tavern door opened again and again. More alphas, more pack leaders, more wolves drawn by the same rumor. The heir to the Lunar Throne had awakened. Lyra felt the pressure of dozens of dominant wolves filling the room. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't supposed to happen. Rowan finally spoke again. "It was inevitable." Lyra turned toward him. "You knew this would happen?" Rowan's gaze softened slightly. "I knew the moment your bloodline woke." His voice lowered. "The world would come looking for you." Lyra's stomach dropped. "You should have told me." Rowan stepped closer. "I tried." Cassian's voice cut between them. "You humiliated her instead." Rowan's jaw tightened. "And now she's surrounded by enemies." Lyra's wolf stirred uneasily. "They're not enemies." Darius Volkov laughed softly. "Oh, they absolutely are." He nodded toward the gathered alphas. "Every one of them wants something." Marcus Rhine spoke calmly. "A queen." The word rippled through the tavern. Lyra's breath caught. "I'm not a queen." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "The Lunar Throne says otherwise." Victor Cade added bluntly, "Any alpha who bonds with you controls the throne." The room fell silent. Lyra looked slowly from one alpha to another. "So that's it." Her voice hardened. "You're all here to marry me." Darius shrugged. "More or less," Cassian muttered under his breath. "This keeps getting worse." Rowan's wolf surged again. His voice dropped into something darker. "No one here will touch her." Marcus met his gaze calmly. "You rejected her claim." Rowan stepped forward. "I delayed it." Marcus smiled faintly. "The rest of us see an opening." The tension snapped tighter. Lyra suddenly felt the strange warmth return to her chest. Stronger this time. Hotter. The room lights flickered again. Several wolves stepped back instinctively. Darius's eyes widened slightly. "Oh." Cassian looked at him. "What now?" Darius's voice lowered. "The throne is reacting." Lyra grabbed the edge of the table as a sudden pulse of energy moved through her body. "What is happening to me?" Rowan moved instantly. His hand caught her arm. "Lyra." The moment he touched her, the pulse exploded. A wave of silver light burst across the tavern floor. Every wolf in the room staggered slightly as the power rolled through them, not violent, but ancient, dominant. The wolves outside began howling simultaneously. Cassian stared in shock. "Lyra." She looked at him, breathing hard. "I didn't mean to—" Darius Volkov smiled slowly. "You didn't trigger it." Lyra frowned. "Then who did?" Darius nodded toward Rowan's hand, still gripping her arm. "The king did." The realization hit the room all at once. The Lunar Throne had responded to the Alpha King. Rowan's expression darkened. Marcus Rhine exhaled slowly. "Well," Victor Cade laughed again. "That confirms it." Lyra looked at Rowan. "What does it confirm?" Marcus answered for him. "That the throne recognizes him." Silence swallowed the tavern. Cassian's voice lowered. "Meaning?" Darius finished the thought. "The Lunar Throne may only accept one Alpha." All eyes turned toward Rowan Valerius, and the woman whose power had just awakened in his hands. Chapter 10. The King Who Finally Knelt. The silver light faded slowly. For a moment the moonlit tavern remained completely still, as if the world itself had paused to understand what had just happened. Lyra Hale stood in the center of the room, her breath uneven, her heart still racing from the sudden surge of power that had moved through her body. The warmth in her chest had not disappeared. It had settled, deep, alive, and the entire room had seen what triggered it. Rowan Valerius's hand still held her arm. Dozens of Alphas stared at them. Alpha Marcus Rhine broke the silence first. "Well," his voice carried calm realization. "That confirms the rumors." Across the room, Alpha Victor Cade gave a sharp laugh. "The throne chose." Lyra pulled her arm from Rowan's grasp. "I didn't choose anything." Darius Volkov leaned against the wall, watching the scene unfold with quiet fascination. "The throne doesn't ask permission." Lyra shook her head. "This is insane." Cassian Thorne stepped closer to her. "You're handling it better than most would." Lyra glanced at him. "Most people aren't suddenly being turned into a political crown." Across the tavern, Rowan Valerius had gone very still. The moment the silver light surged through Lyra, something in his wolf had changed. The bond pulsed now with undeniable certainty. The Lunar Throne had recognized him, which meant every Alpha in the room now understood the truth. Lyra Hale was not simply a powerful bloodline. She was the queen the ancient throne had been waiting for, and Rowan Valerius was the wolf it had chosen beside her. Marcus Rhine stepped forward slowly. "Congratulations, Alpha King." Rowan's golden eyes lifted. "This isn't over," Marcus smiled faintly. "It might be." He nodded toward Lyra. "The throne has spoken." Victor Cade crossed his arms. "Not quite." The room turned toward him. "Why?" Cassian asked. Victor shrugged. "He still hasn't claimed her." The words struck the air like a hammer. Lyra's chest tightened. Because it was true. Rowan had never marked her. The bond still remained incomplete. Marcus Rhine nodded thoughtfully. "He's right." Darius chuckled quietly. "This is the part where things become interesting again." Lyra looked at Rowan. "Say something." Rowan stepped forward slowly. The tavern parted instinctively as he approached her. The mate bond burned between them now, brighter than it ever had before, but Lyra didn't move. "You rejected me," her voice carried across the room. "You humiliated me in front of the entire moon court." Rowan stopped a few feet away. For the first time since entering the tavern, The Alpha King looked uncertain. Cassian noticed immediately. So did every Alpha present, because wolves did not often see kings hesitate. Rowan exhaled slowly. "I know." Lyra's voice sharpened. "You know?" Rowan's wolf stirred painfully beneath his control. "I made the wrong choice." The admission rippled through the tavern. Victor raised his eyebrows. "Well," Marcus Rhine looked genuinely surprised. Cassian said nothing. Lyra stared at Rowan. "You rejected your own mate." Rowan met her gaze fully now. "I tried to protect you." Lyra's voice hardened. "You hurt me." The simple truth landed deeper than any argument. Rowan's shoulders tensed slightly. The Alpha King looked around the room. Dozens of rival alphas watching, waiting, judging. Then Rowan did something that stunned every wolf present. He stepped forward, and slowly, he dropped to one knee. The entire tavern went silent. Cassian blinked. Darius Volkov straightened from the wall. Even Victor Cade looked shocked. Because Alpha Kings did not kneel. Rowan Valerius kept his gaze on Lyra as he knelt before her. Not as a ruler, not as a conqueror, but as a wolf who had made a mistake. His voice lowered. "I chose pride over you." The confession carried quietly across the room. Lyra felt her heart twist painfully. Rowan continued, "I thought rejecting you publicly would keep the court from targeting you." His jaw tightened. "But I underestimated the cost." Lyra swallowed. "You broke me." Rowan's wolf stirred heavily. "I know." The tavern held its breath. Cassian watched the moment carefully. Because, in all his years serving Rowan, he had never seen the king like this. Rowan's voice softened again. "I would undo that night if I could." Lyra's emotions churned inside her chest. Anger, pain, and the bond that refused to die. "You don't get to erase it." Rowan nodded slowly. "I don't want to erase it." Lyra frowned. "What?" Rowan looked up at her. "I want to fix it." Victor Cade scoffed from across the room. "You rejected a queen," Marcus Rhine added calmly. "You'll spend the rest of your life earning that forgiveness." Rowan didn't argue. He simply kept his gaze on Lyra. "I will." The sincerity in his voice filled the room. Lyra's wolf stirred uneasily. The mate bond pulsed again, stronger. But she wasn't ready to surrender. "You think kneeling fixes everything?" Rowan shook his head. "No." Lyra folded her arms. "Then what does?" Rowan stood slowly now. His presence filled the room again. Dominant, unshaken, but different. Because now everyone present had seen something impossible. The Alpha King had knelt. His voice lowered. "Time." Lyra studied him carefully. "And what happens until then?" Rowan's golden eyes flickered briefly toward Cassian, then back to her. "That depends on you." Cassian stepped forward slightly. The room tensed again, because everyone understood what the moment meant. Two powerful wolves, one bond, one queen. Lyra looked between them. Then she spoke the words that changed everything. "I'm not choosing tonight." The tavern erupted with murmurs. Marcus Rhine smiled faintly. "Wise," Victor Cade laughed. "This just got interesting again." Cassian exhaled slowly. Rowan said nothing. But his wolf stirred violently. Because the Alpha King had just realized something terrifying. For the first time since finding his mate, Lyra Hale might actually walk away. Chapter 11. The choice that shook the Alpha King. Night had fully fallen over the moonlit tavern. Outside, the clearing had transformed into something that looked less like a village gathering and more like the beginning of a war council. Fires burned along the forest edge where dozens of packs had made camp, their wolves pacing the borders in restless circles. Inside the tavern, the tension had not eased. If anything, it had deepened, because the Alpha King of the Northern Kingdoms had just knelt before the woman he once rejected, and she had not chosen him. Lyra Hale stood near the center table trying to quiet the storm inside her chest. The Lunar Throne's strange warmth still pulsed beneath her ribs, steady now but impossible to ignore. Every alpha in the room watched her, every one of them waiting for a decision. She hated that. "I'm not a prize," she said again. Her voice carried quietly across the tavern. "But you're all standing here like whoever wins me wins a crown." No one argued. That silence told her everything. Alpha Marcus Rhine finally spoke. "You misunderstand the situation." Lyra looked at him. "Do I?" Marcus gestured toward the room. "None of us can take the throne from you." A pause. "But whoever stands beside you," his gaze flickered briefly toward Rowan, "changes the balance of the entire continent." Lyra exhaled slowly. "Great." Darius Volkov chuckled softly. "Power is rarely convenient." Across the room, Cassian Thorne leaned against a wooden pillar, watching everything quietly. His wolf had been restless since Rowan knelt earlier. Not because of the throne, because of Lyra. She glanced toward him now. "Say something." Cassian straightened slightly. "What do you want me to say?" Lyra gestured around the room. "You've been standing beside me this entire time." Cassian's eyes softened briefly. "That was the job." Lyra frowned. "Protecting me was your job?" Cassian looked toward Rowan for a moment before answering. "Yes." The tavern fell silent again. Lyra blinked. "What?" Cassian pushed away from the wall slowly. "You think I just decided to help you the night Rowan rejected you?" Lyra's chest tightened. "You didn't?" Cassian shook his head. "Rowan ordered me to—" The confession struck the room like thunder. Lyra turned toward Rowan instantly. "You what?" Rowan didn't look surprised. Because the truth had been coming eventually. Cassian continued. "The night before the moon court ceremony," his voice remained calm, "Rowan called me into his war chamber." Lyra's pulse quickened. "What did he say?" Cassian met her gaze. "He told me the court had discovered rumors about the Lunar Throne." Lyra's breath caught. "And?" Cassian's eyes darkened slightly. "He said if they confirmed your bloodline—" A pause. "They would tear the kingdom apart trying to control you." Lyra turned slowly toward Rowan. "And your solution was to humiliate me?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "It was the only way to keep them from claiming you publicly." Lyra's anger flared. "You could have told me." Rowan's voice lowered. "I couldn't risk the court hearing the truth," Cassian added quietly. "He also told me something else." Lyra looked back at him. "What?" Cassian's expression softened slightly. "He told me to stay with you." A pause. "To protect you." Lyra stared at him. "You never said that." Cassian shrugged. "You didn't ask." Darius Volkov laughed quietly. "Well," he looked at Rowan, "that explains a few things." Marcus Rhine nodded thoughtfully. "So the great Alpha King sacrificed his own reputation to protect his mate." Victor Cade snorted. "Still a terrible strategy." Rowan ignored them. His gaze remained on Lyra. "I made the wrong choice." Lyra's voice trembled slightly. "You destroyed me that night." Rowan's wolf stirred painfully. "I know." The room grew quiet again. Lyra looked between Rowan and Cassian. "You both knew the truth." Cassian shook his head. "I didn't know about the throne until tonight." Lyra frowned. "Then why stay?" Cassian's voice softened. "Because Rowan asked me to." The loyalty in the words was unmistakable. Lyra looked back at Rowan. "You trusted him with my life." Rowan nodded once. "He's the only wolf I trust that much." Cassian muttered under his breath. Still not sure that was a good decision. The tension eased slightly as a few wolves chuckled. Lyra didn't. Her chest felt too tight. "You should have trusted me too." Rowan stepped closer. "I do." Lyra shook her head slowly. "You didn't." The mate bond pulsed painfully between them. The Lunar Throne stirred again beneath her ribs, reacting to the emotion flooding the room. Darius noticed immediately. "There it is again." Cassian frowned. "What?" Darius nodded toward Lyra. The throne responds to her choices. Lyra looked at him. What does that mean? Marcus answered quietly. It means your decision tonight may shape the future of every pack in this room. Rowan's voice cut through the tension. You don't have to decide tonight. Every alpha turned toward him. Victor raised an eyebrow. You're willing to walk away? Rowan's golden eyes remained on Lyra. If forcing her to choose destroys what we have. His voice lowered. Then I've already lost. Lyra felt her heart twist painfully again. Cassian watched Rowan carefully. Then he stepped forward. Actually, the room turned toward him. I think she already made her choice. Lyra blinked. I did? Cassian nodded toward Rowan. The throne reacted when he touched you. Darius agreed quietly. That wasn't coincidence. Lyra looked down at her hands. The warmth inside her chest had grown stronger again. Alive. Steady. Then she looked up at Rowan. You still hurt me. Rowan nodded. I know. Lyra took a slow breath. And I'm not ready to forgive that. The words landed firmly. Rowan didn't argue, but Lyra stepped closer to him. Close enough that the bond burned hot between them. Her voice softened slightly. But I'm also not ready to lose you. The confession stunned the room. Rowan's wolf surged. Cassian exhaled quietly. Darius Volkov smiled. There it is. Lyra looked directly into Rowan's eyes. You don't get me back tonight. Rowan waited. Lyra continued. You earn me back. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Rowan finally spoke. I will. And for the first time since the Mooncourt rejection, the bond between them felt like it might actually heal. But outside the tavern, the wolves gathered beneath the rising moon had already realized something. The throne had awakened, the queen had risen, and the kingdoms would never be the same again. Chapter 12. The Mark That Crowned a Queen. The moon rose high above the forest clearing. By midnight, the valley surrounding the moonlit tavern had become something no wolf had seen in centuries. An assembly of alphas. Fires burned across the hills where dozens of rival packs had made camp. Wolves from distant mountains, southern plains, and eastern forests stood watch beneath the pale silver glow of the moon. All of them waiting for the same moment. Inside the tavern, the air felt heavy with anticipation. Lyra Hale stood near the open doorway, staring out at the gathering wolves. The Lunar Throne pulsed quietly inside her chest now, no longer wild or frightening, simply present, like a heartbeat she had only just learned to hear. You feel it now, don't you? Darius Volkov said quietly. Lyra didn't turn. Yes, Darius leaned against the wall beside her. The throne is awake. Lyra exhaled slowly. And everyone out there knows it. Across the room, Alpha Marcus Rhine and Alpha Victor Cade spoke quietly with several other pack leaders. None of them looked pleased, but none of them looked surprised either. The world had just changed, and wolves adapted quickly to change. Cassian Thorne stood near the tavern window, watching the clearing carefully. They're not leaving, Lyra glanced at him. Of course they're not. Cassian gave a faint smile. You're the most valuable wolf on the continent now. Lyra rolled her eyes. That's comforting. Near the center of the room, Rowan Valerius stood silently, his gaze fixed on Lyra, as though nothing else in the world mattered. The bond between them had settled into something quieter after their conversation earlier. Still powerful, still alive, but no longer violent. Lyra felt it every time she looked at him. She turned toward him now. Why are you staring? Rowan didn't hesitate. Because I almost lost you. Lyra's chest tightened slightly. You did lose me. Rowan nodded slowly. For a while, the honesty in his voice softened something inside her. Cassian cleared his throat quietly. I'm still here, by the way. Darius chuckled. Relax, Commander. No one's replacing you. Cassian muttered under his breath. Good. Marcus Rhine stepped forward then, his voice carried across the tavern. "The packs are waiting." Lyra looked at him. "For what?" Marcus gestured toward Rowan. "For the end of this," Victor Cade added bluntly, "or the beginning." Lyra felt the Lunar Throne stir again. The warmth spread through her chest and down her arms like liquid silver. Darius watched carefully. "The throne is pushing you." Lyra frowned. "Pushing me where?" Darius nodded toward Rowan. "To the decision you've been avoiding." The tavern fell silent again. Rowan didn't move. He simply waited. Lyra walked slowly across the room until she stood directly in front of him. The bond surged instantly, stronger than it had ever been before. "You're not getting me back easily," she said quietly. Rowan's voice softened. "I wouldn't deserve you if it was easy." Lyra studied his face carefully. For the first time since the Moon Court rejection, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Not just dominance, not just the weight of a king, but regret, real regret. "You hurt me," she said again. Rowan nodded. "I know." Lyra stepped closer, close enough that the warmth of his wolf surrounded her. "But you also protected me." Rowan said nothing. Lyra exhaled slowly. "And that matters." Across the tavern the Alphas watched carefully. Even Victor Cade had stopped smiling. Because everyone present understood what this moment meant. Lyra looked into Rowan's golden eyes. "If you ever humiliate me like that again," Rowan interrupted quietly. "I won't." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't a threat." Rowan's mouth curved faintly. It sounded like one. Lyra fought a small smile. Then the Lunar Throne pulsed again, stronger, demanding. Darius whispered softly, "There it is." Lyra looked back at Rowan. "The throne wants the bond finished." Rowan's voice lowered. "So does my wolf." Lyra hesitated for one final moment. Then she lifted her chin slightly. "Then do it right this time." The room held its breath. Rowan stepped closer slowly, his hand lifted to cup her jaw gently. The touch sent a rush of warmth through the bond between them. "Lyra Hale," he said quietly, "for all the mistakes I made." His thumb brushed lightly against her cheek. "I will spend the rest of my life proving you were worth fighting for." Lyra's heart pounded. "Good." Rowan leaned closer. "And for the record," his voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear, "I never stopped wanting you." Then he lowered his head. His teeth brushed gently against the side of her neck. The mate bond ignited. Lyra gasped softly as Rowan bit down, the mark sealing with a pulse of heat that spread through her entire body. Silver light exploded across the tavern floor. Outside, the wolves howled as the Lunar Throne awakened fully for the first time in centuries. The power surged outward through the valley like a rising tide. Every wolf present felt it. The bond, the crown, the queen. Rowan pulled back slowly. The mate mark burned bright against Lyra's skin. Darius Volkov smiled. "Well," Marcus Rhine bowed his head slightly. Victor Cade exhaled with reluctant respect. Cassian Thorne folded his arms and shook his head with a faint grin. "Finally!" Outside the clearing erupted with howls, not of challenge, but of acknowledgement. The packs had witnessed the awakening, the throne had chosen, and the queen now stood beside her king. Lyra looked at Rowan. "You're still earning my forgiveness," Rowan's voice warmed. "I plan to—" The Lunar Throne pulsed again beneath her ribs, but this time it felt different. Not like power, like belonging. For the first time since the night of the Moon Court rejection, Lyra Hale no longer felt like a wolf being hunted. She felt like a queen. Epilogue. The kingdom that kneels. Dawn arrived slowly over the northern valley. Mist drifted across the hills where dozens of packs had gathered through the night. The fires that had burned along the forest edge now smouldered softly beneath the pale light of morning. What had begun as a hunt had become something else entirely. A coronation. At the center of the clearing, the wolves of the continent stood in a silent circle. Alphas, warriors, pack elders, all of them waiting. A stone platform had been raised beside the moonlit tavern, simple but ancient in its design. The same stones had once belonged to an older kingdom, long before the northern territories had been united beneath a single crown. And now those stones would witness the birth of another. Lyra Hale stepped forward first. The lunar throne pulsed steadily beneath her ribs, no longer wild or uncertain. The power had settled into something deeper now, something that felt less like a burden and more like a legacy finally remembered. The wind lifted her dark hair as she stepped onto the stone platform. The entire clearing fell silent. Behind her, Rowan Valerius followed. The Alpha King of the Northern Kingdoms no longer looked like a wolf trying to control a storm. He looked like a king who had finally accepted the one force stronger than his pride. The mate mark on Lyra's neck glowed faintly in the morning light. The bond between them felt steady, balanced, equal. Across the clearing, the gathered alphas watched carefully. Alpha Marcus Rhine stepped forward first. For a long moment he studied Lyra. Then the southern alpha did something no one expected. He bowed his head. Not to Rowan, to Lyra Hale. The gesture sent a ripple through the assembled wolves. Marcus's voice carried clearly across the valley. The southern territories acknowledged the Queen of the Lunar Throne. The declaration settled like thunder over the clearing. Lyra felt the throne pulse again, not in hunger, in recognition. Next came Alpha Victor K. The Iron Ridge War Alpha approached the platform slowly, his heavy boots grinding against the gravel beneath him. For a moment he looked at Rowan. Then his gaze shifted to Lyra. A faint smile touched his scarred face. Well, he folded one fist across his chest in the traditional warrior's salute. I suppose the throne made its decision. He lowered his head. The Iron Ridge packs acknowledge Queen Lyra Hale. The murmurs across the valley grew louder. Wolf after wolf stepped forward. Mountain packs, river clans, southern hunters. One by one they lowered their heads. At the edge of the platform, Cassian Thorn watched quietly, his arms folded across his chest. Darius Volkov leaned beside him. Your king got lucky. Cassian snorted softly. He nearly lost her. Darius smiled. Most kings would have. Cassian's gaze moved toward Lyra, but he didn't. On the platform, Rowan stepped forward beside her. The clearing fell silent again, because the Alpha King was about to speak. Rowan's voice carried across the valley with quiet authority. Last night, the Lunar Throne awakened. A pause. And the wolves of the continent witnessed it. His golden eyes moved across the gathered packs. For centuries, the throne waited for its queen. He turned slightly toward Lyra. And now she stands before you. Lyra felt the warmth in her chest deepen again. Rowan continued. But hear this clearly. His voice hardened slightly. She does not stand beneath my rule. The statement rippled through the crowd. Rowan's hand lifted gently to rest against the small of Lyra's back. She stands beside it. The wolves murmured again, because kings rarely shared power. Rowan's voice lowered. Lyra Hale is not only my mate. He glanced at her. She is my equal. The words carried further than any declaration of dominance ever had. The Lunar Throne pulsed again, silver light flickering briefly across the platform stones. The wolves felt it. The bond between king and queen had become something stronger than tradition, something older. Cassian stepped forward. The war commander dropped to one knee at the base of the platform. Lyra blinked in surprise. Cassian? He looked up at her. My queen. The words carried no hesitation. I swore my loyalty to Rowan Valerius. His voice steadied. Today I swear it to you as well. Behind him, dozens of warriors followed his example. One by one, the wolves of the northern armies knelt, not to the king, to the queen. Lyra felt the moment settle over her like the turning of a page in history. She looked at Rowan quietly. You're responsible for this. Rowan's mouth curved slightly. I started a war trying to get you back. Lyra raised an eyebrow. And now? Rowan's voice softened. Now I'll spend the rest of my life making sure it was worth it. Lyra looked out across the kneeling wolves, across the valley where rival alphas now stood in uneasy alliance, across the kingdom that had once hunted her. The Lunar Throne pulsed warmly inside her chest, and for the first time since the night she offered herself to Cassian Thorn, the wolf who had been rejected by her king no longer felt broken. She felt powerful. She felt chosen. She felt like the future of an entire kingdom. Lyra turned back toward Rowan. You still owe me a lot of forgiveness. Rowan smiled faintly. I plan to earn it. The wind swept across the valley as the wolves began to rise again. But the moment remained, because from that day forward the northern kingdoms would remember one truth above all others. The king had once rejected his mate, but the queen had made an entire continent kneel.